Warning, this episode contains depictions of creepy twins, cheap, good quality housing with lots of public community spaces, and as always, teen angst. Also, there will be spoilers for chapter 48 through 52 of Eragon, book 1 of the Inherent Cycle by Christopher Paolini. Listen at your own risk.
Is this a podcast, or is this just fantasy? We're just two nerds and we love our fantasy. So join us if you want to nerd out. Time to start the podcast and see. And anyway, here's the show.
Hello, readers. I'm Dane Patterson, the host who would have let the dragon eat the twins the moment I met them, or frankly, any twin. The whole twin thing's kind of creepy to me, but that's just me.
Brutal. And I'm Jacqui Linear, and is this a podcast or is this just fantasy? The podcast where we evidently are taking a strong anti-twin stance.
Yeah. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, there's a link in the show notes. And if you don't or can't because you're a twin and you hate us now, we totally understand. And just ask that you please rate us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast. You can check us out on our social media at Is This Just Fantasy Pod on TikTok or at Just Fantasy Pod on Instagram and Twitter.
Yes, and if you're into like stickers and shirts and I don't know, hats, sweatsuits, tumblers.
We got cool mugs.
That's
Check
us.
That out.
They celebrate both the nerdy glory of Eragon, some exclusive to Eragon merch, and also the wide universe of like fantasy symbolism. Lots of our merch has cool like graphic cartoony designs.
Yeah.
Strong. Advise you to check it out. It's cool as hell. I'm excited to do my recap in this episode because I think I stand a fighting chance for once of actually making it fast. I think I can do it.
Yeah?
Not a lot happened last time in our last episode.
I mean, Jacqui, I guess if you don't count them trying to kill their horses for 5 chapters, nothing. Strong anti-horse stance from Jacqui.
Listen, I think you are the one. I think we established you're the one with the anti-horse stance here. You were hating.
We should have a list now.
Yes. All the things Dane is specifically very opposed to. But I do want to look back at what we covered on the last episode before we finally get to make it to our friends and also some sketchy twins over at the Varden.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So we started the last set of chapters battered and broken after the prison break at Gilead. Our boy band and their new comatose fugitive friend are on the lam, heading south out of town with the medieval popo hot on their trail. After sparing next to no thought for the welfare of their noble steeds, and for once, an appropriate amount of thought for where the hell they're headed, they decided to head through the supremely inhospitable expanse of the Hatterack Desert toward the Varden's secretive hideout somewhere unknown in the world's largest mountain range. And believe it or not, that was their best option of places to go.
Easy peasy.
They were in a bind, I will say.
This is the Sword Bros and Dream Girl. This is the greatest band of all time. They're going to get through this.
That's correct. But after Kevin's all over the place, trying to figure out how to keep the party supplied with water in a barren desert, he realizes that he should probably dedicate a little more time to figuring out why his super hot elven companion hasn't shown even, I don't know, a flutter of coming out of her stupor in close to a week.
Oh, Kevin.
She's been unconscious the entire time. He decides a good way to remedy this is to forcibly invade her unconscious brain with his mind magic. She's understandably pissed about this. She does not love it. She attacks him back, which I love for her. But ultimately, she does let him download the map straight to the Varden, like from her memory. She does know how to get there, and they can save her. She clues him into the fact that her coma is medically self-induced to slow the spread of a poison that will kill her in about 3 days if they can't get to the Varden in time. So that seems cool. The distances here are a problem. I know you're going to talk about that so much more. So I'll leave it with if you thought they were trying to run their horses to death trying to make it to the desert, it's just all out murder and mayhem for the horses once they make it out of said desert and are heading for the Varden deep in the Bior Mountains. We have a force of hundreds of bloodthirsty Urgles in hot pursuit now, and the torturous difference of political opinions that results in a fist fight between friends.
No.
Yes, such angst.
I mean, friends should not fight about politics. We've never fought about politics.
That's a funny joke. And we closed our last episode with our boys getting trapped by a band of slavers that ended, the whole interaction ended with Murtagh beheading the slavers' leader, the whimsically named Torkenbrand. Guy's name is great, and he sucks. But another fight ensues between the Sword Bros over this whole thing, and we fade to black with nobody speaking around the campfire and the clock ticking on Arya the elf's life. Are you ready to get these crazy kids to the Varden?
I mean, just no tension there, no stress, just a nice leisurely trip through the mountains.
It's not great.
It's really tense.
Yes, dude.
I don't know. I mean, we have a few more episodes. A few more chapters, and we'll have gotten through 10 episodes in the first book of this series.
Yes, yeah, we're pretty close. I think this is going to end up being our penultimate episode here.
I've been having so much fun, except for these moments. No, I've been having so much fun, and I've enjoyed the journey so far. How do you feel about the podcast and the story?
Yeah, the story part of it has been a wild ride. Like diving back into Eragon after so many years feels kind of like a trip. Like I love the added element of danger on top of it.
Yeah.
That maybe we're running the risk of picking apart a beloved world and characters until it's unrecognizable. That's been very fun.
Ooh, the danger.
Yes. Should we just ruin this for ourselves?
Let's take something we love and look at it deeply.
Yes. It has been really fun. I mean, I still am not necessarily like connected to the idea that this goes out in the world, that this goes like anywhere that's not my computer.
Right.
Like just us listening to and editing these files. I don't know. That feels strange to me. So
we'll always have our time with Kevin, our producer.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, with Eragon, our producer.
It's really about the Eragons you meet along the way. But I think what I'm really learning throughout this experience is that though I may be basic and my standards may be low, fuck it. Like at least I think I like genuinely enjoy the things I love for what they are. Like,
hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm having this realization that we are looking at a lot more of the warts, a lot more of the flaws, or, you know, the not so nice things of this book than I ever have, especially with me reading all the hate on the internet for this book, which has taken hours of my life I'll never get back.
Yes.
It has definitely changed the way that I see this book, but surprisingly for the better.
Okay.
This book reminds me so much of my childhood and like the start of my reading journey, and it really is fun. I love the magic system. I love the characters.
Yes, you do.
I really love the magic system. I love talking to you about it. I'm truly just having a lot of fun. I think it's just cool we did this. And if nobody's listening except my mom, who are we kidding? My mom's not listening to this. Then at least, you know, we did it. You know what I mean? We're having fun. And again, we're making memories with Eragon here, and I'm enjoying it.
Yes, I have been really excited to do this. About this section specifically, I feel like I like the pacing of this book completely vacated my memory between my last couple of rereads, because I didn't realize this is how long it took to make it to Trondheim, and I've been looking forward to getting back to the city under the mountain. It was one of my very, very favorite parts of this world when I first read it. The setting is bar none, like almost unparalleled. There's like one other setting I like this much.
It's so cool
in the book. So I'm excited. Can we start? Chapter breakdowns? Do it.
Yeah, I can definitely get started. At Chapter 48, Flight Through the Valley. The death of the slaver still irritates Eragon as we start this chapter. And how do you feel about that, Jax? We've had a week, or we've had some time to think about it.
Yes, and I don't think we talked about it nearly enough. So I think it's important that we revisit that.
Everyone, we're going to have another 30-minute chat about...
Buckle up. No, I think actually for the place we start this particular chapter, I have like a very visceral understanding of like waking up still pissed after a fight. So I'm kind of with Eragon here. Like he's really developing this respect for life at all costs. We see like an honest, serious like evolution of his values, which is fun. And I'm glad he's kind of sticking to his guns about it and waking up with a little bit of like, yeah, fuck you still. It's like, in this way, I am Eragon.
That sounds very healthy to me.
Yes, everybody, please prayers up for my very nice boyfriend.
Poor Ben. I think I'm still the same here as I felt last episode. I think it's good. Eragon is thinking about right and wrong as a dragon rider, and this is going to be important if you don't want to end up like Galbatorix. As you're pointing out, what we're really seeing is Eragon coming up with a value system here, which I think is really cool, despite maybe me not completely agreeing with how he feels so strongly about it.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll just move on. While scouting on Saphira, he notices that the Urgles are gaining on them. Even though they aren't on horseback. Eragon lands and decides that they won't get to the Varden at this rate for 3 more days. But Arya will die in a day.
That's, impossible sounding.
Yeah, I really don't know how they're supposed to overcome that. It seems really odd to me. Eragon says that they can't stop for food, for water, or for sleep. And Murtagh says, this is why I love Murtagh so much, well, the horses will die. They can't physically do that. And Eragon says, so be it.
And he's just like, we'll just all die.
Apparently so. This dream girl needs to live. He doesn't know her, but she's so pretty.
So pretty. Smells like freshly crushed pine needles, Dane. Thank God. It's really baffling, actually. I mean, it feels tense when you're reading it. You're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Are they going to do it? It seems like absolutely they could not possibly.
Well, it's impossible the way that it's been designed.
Yes.
So like the feeling of tension is like what is the way around this? Let's see what happens. Murtagh says he will escape the Varden when they get closer, and Eragon still doesn't really understand why he's so like opposed to joining forces with the Varden. And I want to point out a disagreement here about the slaver one more time, just very briefly. Eragon says, because it comes up again.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, Eragon's not because I want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Eragon,
I don't think you wrote the book, Dane.
No. Eragon says that he should think of saving the elf as a debt.
Okay.
A life for a life, like motivation for Murtagh. And Murtagh tells him it isn't a debt owed. And I really enjoy this tension because, as we mentioned last episode, it brings a lot more depth to the characters. They sleep on the horses and push them through the whole day until midnight to get to the valley that ends in a waterfall covered entrance to the Varden's lair.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's not some supervillain shit right there. Like, I don't know what is. I also, so the whole time they're writing, correct me if I'm remembering this wrong for some reason, but like they're both ruminating a lot, right? On that last point about the slaver you brought up. Like,
there's lots of tension. They're not even like talking to each other. They're both just like,
it's like an internal monologue thing, and they're very crabby.
And like, yeah, and I, like I said, I don't know how the horses aren't dead here. Am I missing something? Like they just got. There was the tension, and now they're just there.
I mean, like, I think it's just somehow a facet of this magic system that if you name a horse after a real person you know, that horse will gain supernatural abilities. I'd like a deep dive about how exactly that works, Professor Dane. Like, give us the deep dive. That has got to be a part of this hard, well thought out magic system.
I'm not galloping down that road. Nay, I say. Nay. Anyway, Eragon agrees to Murtagh going his own way when they reach the Varden, as long as Murtagh takes Snowfire with him, because he thinks he's going to have to ditch Snowfire and get on Saphira. Okay. And after a while, the Urgles are only a league behind them.
And like, when did we make the jump from 10 miles to the farm? That's my impression of Dane, by the way.
Oh, really?
Like, when did we make the switch from 10 miles from the farm to Carvajal to leagues as our primary unit of measure? Like, everything's just leagues now?
Yeah, Jax, you totally nailed it. Eragon is just distance confused. That's what I think.
Okay.
You see, he walked 10 miles to his village from home so casually and so consistently that his scale of the normal distance to travel in a day is just skewed. You solved the problem. Paolini had a plan for everything.
Oh, and I knew it.
Yes.
That's me.
You inherently knew that. Anyway, Murtagh starts to panic as he realizes the valley is a dead end. Aragon's not very chill here. Eragon just tells him, don't worry about it, bro. And he...
Live in the now, Murtagh.
Yeah, Eragon does try to scout one more time for Murtagh, so that's nice at least. They fly so high while scouting that Eragon can't breathe.
Not great.
Can't talk to Saphira.
Just once again, cutting off oxygen to his
little BB brain.
Very precious but oft disregarded brain that's developing. He's Doesn't give a shit about it.
Doesn't care at all. The water on his body freezes.
Ugh.
Then eventually he passes out.
That cannot be good.
At this point, he's going to have some problems. They can't fly out of the valley. They're trapped. These mountains are so large that there is no way. They are trapped.
So they can't see an escape route.
There's no valley to walk through within the valley. There's no like areas you could walk past or out of the valley in.
Yeah.
And you can't fly out of it. So like it's in or out. That's crazy.
And so he doesn't see any escape route for Murtagh either.
No. So Eragon gets the bright idea too, like from flying so high and probably from passing out. So from very, very far away from his enemies, from a great distance, a magical risk he has now experienced in many ways. Make a wall of fog to deter the Urgles on the ground. Just an obscuring misspell for all you D&D and Pathfinder nerds out there. Hundreds, if not thousands, probably thousands of feet away, which almost makes him pass out immediately again.
You know, Kevin's gonna Kev, Dane. He I guess you could say he was suffering from a bit of brain fog when he made this decision.
His heart, and I'm quoting, flutters like a dying bird.
Poor Eragon.
Now this great risk, this Kevin move, it surprisingly doesn't work
No.
at all. It doesn't even slow the Urgles down.
They just like wave the mist away. They're like, ugh.
They like pause and they're like, wait a minute. And then I imagine like one of the Urgles looks at the other one and goes, it's just fog, man.
Yeah.
And then they just keep running.
Keep it moving.
Eragon tells, sorry, Saphira like yells at him.
Yeah.
But Eragon tells Murtagh that the Urgles are already in the valley. Eragon explains that these Urgles are really huge and large. And we learned something. Murtagh tells us for the first time in this series about Cull.
Okay.
Cull are a special elite species of the Urgle and are 8 feet plus tall. Yeah. Cull are too large for horses, so I looked this up so we can get an idea of how much they weigh.
Okay.
Google tells me that they weigh above 350 pounds.
Okay.
Because that's about where you can't ride a horse.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Cull can run for days on end, which we've kind of seen. I think.
Yeah. Experientially, we know this to be true.
Yeah, like almost faster than the horses. So these
It is
are
faster than the horses.
Yeah.
The Cull are gaining. It's described throughout the whole section.
crazy.
Yeah.
The Cull typically take it takes 5 soldiers to bring a Cull down. Typically takes 5 soldiers.
And we have 1, 2
teens.
2 soldiers. 2 teens.
Two
yes,
teens.
That's correct. But they're master swordsmen, Dane. Masters of the blades.
These things seem really bad. The boys are tired. The elf is dying. The horses are tired, and there's no way out. Also, the horses are dying. The Cull are chasing them. It's yikes. So the hazy idea of obscuring misspell didn't work earlier. Eragon and Saphira decide they're going to drop stones on the Cull as they rush the Varden's doorstep. And after this does little to nothing to slow the Cull down because one stone at a time, just for some reason, isn't making a dent in the horde of giant monsters. Eragon is now frantically looking for the entrance. They land. Eragon rides with Murtagh as they get to the end of the valley, and Eragon tells Murtagh there is no way out. Murtagh's pissed, and he stops his horse.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, they stopped to chat here. And I'm like, guys, you gotta go, guys. They're just like, stop.
Nobody got time for that.
Even Saphira's like, dudes, let's go.
Yes.
So the Varden is now the only option. Eragon and Murtagh continue to argue, and both of them are pretty unfair here. But we learn a huge revelation.
Yes.
Murtagh is the son of Morzan, the first and the last of the Forsworn.
Okay. I will admit, on my first read, this was like a very, very good end of chapter cliffhanger. Like, this is exactly the kind of thing that made my little 11-year-old brain decide that, like, sleep is for the weak. We can stay up till 2 a.m. reading, a thing that I definitely don't still do because sleep is important.
Yeah. I mean, I was exactly the same. I agree. A 12-year-old Dane was like, what? No, not my boy Murtagh.
Yes, oh my gosh, yeah, I bet. Well, that does lead us to chapter 49, The Horns of a Dilemma. This chapter opens with Eragon still reeling from Murtagh's confession. He isn't sure if he and Saphira can still trust the son of the most powerful traitor in like Empire history.
Yeah.
A guy like Murtagh, a guy who could very understandably have a grudge against our favorite badass mentor Brom, who just happened to kill Morzan, Murtagh's dad, and give the bloody trophy of that kill to Eragon, which Eragon has been sparring Murtagh with all along.
Yeah, you could see how that might, ruffle some of Murtagh's feathers maybe a bit.
Yes, dude, and he knew, remember what Zarok was right when he saw it. He's like, oh yeah, that's my dad's sword.
That's my daddy's sword.
It's crazy. Anyway, Murtagh does make a strong case, speaking of the sword, for why he hates his father, hates Galbatorix, and hates the Empire. So he's like, don't worry, I'm not trying to murder you. You're my new best boy. So he does this by showing Eragon a gruesome scar that like runs across his entire back that Morzan gave him when he was just a baby.
Yeah.
So apparently Morzan threw Zarok at Murtagh when Murtagh was 3, a toddler. He threw a magical, ever sharp blade at a 3-year-old.
That's not nice.
Yes. That guy sounds like he really fucking sucked. So on brand as ever, ain't nobody got time to hash all that shit out. We just find out this horrible, like, big T trauma that Murtagh has.
It's like when you care about what someone says, but you're like, but I do have to go to the meeting.
I'm so busy. Yes, the Cull are bearing down on our interpersonally plagued sword bros here.
I don't know about the Jackson. The Cull are a physical threat.
Yes.
But the real danger has been heartbreak all along.
Well, isn't it always? So they need to keep booking it for that waterfall. Even with everything that's going on, Eragon still actually feels kind of protective over Murtagh, now starting to ruminate about what might happen to him when they reach the Varden. And Saphira definitely seems to be vouching for Murtagh's honesty, which is kind of cool. She figures he could have killed them a long ass time ago, obviously, if he'd wanted to. So I think I get Saphira in this part. And while this whole thing is kind of wild, happening against a backdrop of this like frenetic chase sequence, the guys and horses with Arya are like edging around the lake with a waterfall at its end. This is the end of the valley, finally. The Cull are being forced to pursue single file, thank God. Saphira is providing some air support here, chomping Cull, like just full on. Just
like flying
grab with
chomp.
jaw, chomp, chomp, and dropping their dismembered bodies in the lake, which is like, go off, queen. Yes.
Saphira is so gnarly, dude.
Absolutely savage. So Saphira, as all this is continuing on towards the waterfall, Saphira takes a swan dive into the lake as the guys turn to fight the advancing Cull while backing up to the waterfall that hides the entrance to the Varden's outpost. She helps to stem the flow of Cull from inside the lake. But things are looking dicey as Eragon finally makes it to the rock that should be the door, like from Arya's memories, and starts screaming the password at it. He's shouting this like ancient language nonsense at a rock that's not doing shit in response.
So funny.
I know. And the Cull are closing in on all sides now. They're kind of starting to skirt around the other side of the lake. They've got a while to go, but like, it looks so bad.
It's looking bad.
Yes. And Arya's due to die at truly any second, like yesterday. And Saphira now is taking hits from inside the lake, like dicier and dicier by the ever loving moment. And then of course Saphira realizes by like taking a quick trip back down Arya's memory lane, they're on the wrong side of the lake. No. I know. So the entrance is on the other side of the waterfall, and they end up making a mad like just absolutely frantic.
Hold on. Yes. You're telling me the 2 teenage boys didn't read the homework's directions before they went all the way to the end of the assignment?
Absolutely not. And who had to pick them up? The like effectively teenaged girl.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The dragon. Yes, unfortunately. So they're like frantically strapping Arya onto Saphira's back. So Saphira's going to fly the unconscious lady to the other side. And Eragon and Murtagh they decide their only option is to take the horses like through the waterfall. Oof. It's truly a harebrained plan. Eragon gets stuck under the deluge of water and like is actively drowning when he's saved at the last second by a dwarf who's come out from the mountain with the Varden's defenses to drive back the Cull. They're going to make it.
Yes.
Except... don't get excited yet. Except as the fog of war just starts to lift, Eragon realizes that a sinister-ass bald man in fancy robes is holding Murtagh at knife point, and he threatens to kill Murtagh if Eragon does magic or truly does anything except get the fuck inside the mountain and follow instructions. This guy is almost like a Sloane level asshole to me so far. Like, he's been on screen for a moment.
Yes.
And I'm like, ooh, big Sloane vibes. But Eragon and Saphira decide they have no choice but to go with the strangers who saved them from the cold. That's a fair.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
Yeah, I guess we'll
of the two options.
do it. So the chapter closes with our crew being sealed in the stone door of the Varden's lair.
So good.
Ooh.
Yeah, chapter 50, hunting for answers. This chapter starts tense, as you just described, because we come back
a bit.
Yeah, right where we left off.
It hasn't like smash cut 4 days later. Everyone's like on vacation in Aruba now.
Yeah, exactly. The bald man is still threatening Murtagh, and Arya is still dying and needs help ASAP. There's like a lot of tension here. They enter a room and are shut inside. It's like a stone box, essentially. The bald man says that if they come any further, they need to go unarmed, and Eragon needs to submit to the bald man's mind inspection.
I don't love that. I have a feeling also Eragon's not going to love that based on everything he's thought about, like mind invasion up to this point.
I mean, could you imagine as a 16-year-old, someone being able to rummage through all of your thoughts and memories?
No, dude. Nobody would want to do that, first of all.
That's a dark place.
That's correct.
Let's just say I knew the Varden was the real enemy the whole time. I've been basically saying this from the beginning.
Right, yeah. Terrorists are justice
for my boy Gal.
Terror.
Yeah. Eragon begs the man to help Arya first, but the bald man won't hear about it. The dwarf Ulrich ends up listening to Eragon, taking the bald man in to save Arya.
Okay.
We also learn Arya was the elf from the prologue who was transporting the egg.
That's right. She's the only survivor of like vicious shade attack, forest fire, rampage.
It sounds like she's had a rough go.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, they take Arya, and the bald man ruthlessly just like enters Eragon's mind. It's powerful. It's painful. Saphira starts helping Eragon protect his secret memories. Letting the bald man take what he wants other than a few select things. So Eragon protects his discussions with Brom. So the brain teasers he really wanted to keep away.
Right.
The ancient language he learned.
Okay.
The witch and werecat prophecies. The heist.
Yeah.
The jailbreak. And the truth of Murtagh's parentage. Which is a super pro move from Eragon here.
Yeah, that's really nice of him. I mean, just the vibes are so bad through this whole section. I hate the way all this shit is described.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's not nice.
No.
I think this is where we're getting that, like, what are the ethics of all this stuff here?
Yes, for sure. Definitely gives me the ick.
Yeah. Important to note, the bald man seems to linger on Selena, his mother, who was Eragon's mom. At this point, I have to assume she's important because Angela the Witch might have given her a fortune reading.
That's right.
Brom knew who she was.
Okay.
And now this freaky guy lingers. So nice one, Paolini. I see you. She's someone important, I guess.
Okay.
I've got my eye on you. All right. Finally, the bald man relents and Eragon falls to the ground, totally wrung out. The dwarf comes to Eragon's defense, and the bald man says he isn't a threat. Like, Eragon isn't a threat.
Okay.
Murtagh won't let the bald man in his mind. He even fights the bald man off with his own mind long enough.
That's crazy.
Yeah, for Ulrich to pull, like, I guess he doesn't like pull the twin off Murtagh, but like mentally is like shouting at him enough like to get him off. Obviously, there's some political factions within this organization, as the bald man and the dwarf seem to be in like completely different camps. They mention completely different leaders.
Well, yeah, at a bare minimum, they don't like each other.
Yeah, exactly. And because Murtagh won't let the bald man into his mind, he and Eragon have to rest in this like square chamber. They entered and they wait in the Varden's lobby. Yeah. So
do you think the receptionist is nice?
Yeah,
do you think there's little mints?
Just in the background, like do. You know, this is like magazines.
Yeah.
This is like Gal, front of
old
Time magazine.
Copies of
Gal Torques every issue.
Time Man of the Year.
Every month.
Hey, Hitler was Time Man of the Year once.
Oh my gosh. That's dark. We learn Murtagh has been trained to protect his mind, and our sword bros and Saphira finally get to catch a nap.
Thank God.
Yeah, and Eragon heals Saphira because she was actually, fighting people.
That's right.
Then they have the most interesting conversation as Eragon presses Murtagh on why he would even like be out and about. He has never heard of the children of the Forsworn. Why would the child of a Forsworn run from the Empire?
Yes.
After trying to evade Eragon's questions, Murtagh finally gives us some deets.
Yes, and I know if I loved this, you had to be losing your goddamn mind. Get into it, Dane.
I distinctly remember a young Dane being like, "This is what I live for. Give me more."
Murtagh backstory.
Yes. Murtagh is most likely the only child of the 13 Forsworn, but he doesn't know for sure. That's what his hunch is. His parents met while his father was in a small village. They fell in love, and she came to court with him. She could do magic, and Morzan taught her more of it so that she could help him. They were a team, a good duo, and he protected her from the other Forsworn and from Galbatorix. After 3 years, his mother became pregnant.
Okay.
Morzan took his wife to his castle, with Galbatorix being the only one who knew. So Gal was in on this.
Okay.
This was important as the Forsworn were, I guess, pitted against each other by Galbatorix and always fought each other.
That doesn't seem fun.
I mean, Jackson, I'm starting to think Gal's not a good guy.
No. A guy who just randomly wants to torture the closest people to him by making them jockey for position in his court.
Yeah.
That seems fine. That seems like, honestly, most leaders of most countries. I don't know.
I don't know. I've been in some corporate American jobs that might be similar. Morzan gave Murtagh a scar on his back when he was around 3. Then 3 more years passed, and his mom ran away, and even Galbatorix couldn't find her due to the Morzan wizard training.
It's crazy.
Yeah, she was a badass. For some reason, I picture Murtagh's mom as like a biker lady with tattoos and one dangly earring.
Of course you do, yeah.
Maybe a feather or something. Maybe tall hair. I don't know. You get what I'm
Tall
saying.
hair?
Yeah, like
Amy Winehouse
yeah,
tall hair? Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Maybe some dark eyeliner.
My first reference for tall hair is like Golden Girls, Beehive, like Grandma Tall. And I was like, those things don't make sense together.
More like they try to make me go to Urobane, and I said, no. Okay, anyway.
How many
singing.
episodes do you think we're going to be able to make without you singing?
We're going to start
in a
getting some
row?
hate mail. Kevin definitely hates it. Every time I do it, his face goes, ooh, okay, there it is. Brom eventually killed Morzan, the last of the Forsworn. And the other had died from suicide, we learn, overuse of magic, and assassination by the Varden. So the Varden's effective. It was what we're learning. But before Morzan died, she returned, this woman, to the castle and died of an illness
Okay.
that no one could heal, apparently. And Murtagh grew up under the care of Galbatorix, who paid for his education and comfort.
Eek.
There is a silver lining here because it doesn't sound as bad as it is. Murtagh finally ran away at the age of 18 after having his birthday dinner at the local Rainforest Cafe with Galbatorix. That really disturbed him. And this is the real first time that they actually spoke in his life. So Galbatorix was not raising him. Or he paid for maids and tutors.
So he wasn't
stuff.
Under the constant scrutiny of the evil and insane murder wizard. It was just take my money, go away for a while. When you come to adulthood, let's have a chat.
Yeah, if this was the Broadway show Annie, Murtagh is Annie here, and Galbatorix is Daddy Warbucks. Anyway, Galbatorix refused to talk to him during the dinner, but once the food was gone, he spoke to Murtagh, and Murtagh says that the sound of Galbatorix's voice is like a snake's, and that it can be very, very persuasive and charming, saying, quote, "A more convincing and frightening man I have never heard."
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I wonder if this is connected at all to what we know from Brom, who told Eragon Galbatorix was the most skilled at breaking into people's minds. I wonder if this is a more flies with honey kind of a situation.
Yes, I get
you know
what
I
saying.
mean?
Yeah,
he's so smooth and suave instead of just berating, a constant barrage to break in. He's oh, hey.
Yeah.
You seem there's a little pain behind those eyes.
Exactly. Galbatorix painted a beautiful utopia of the Empire with his words that sounded rather lovely, including even bringing the riders back. He spoke for hours, Murtagh said, which, I understand. Murtagh asked how the rider would come back, and Galbatorix did not answer, but rather asked Murtagh to join him as his father had to make their vision come true. Murtagh was very excited at this point because, he'd been wooed by what you just said, the slimy salesman pitch of all this.
Yeah.
And he said yes. So he joined Galbatorix, and he was left alone for a few months before he was finally called on. And when he was, the man he met was not charming, but very scary, and like charged Murtagh to destroy a whole city.
This is Galbatorix again.
Yes,
like
and
when Galbatorix finally called him in, he did it personally to give orders, and he was a different dude.
He was not good.
Ugh.
He decided he wanted Murtagh to destroy a whole city, kill even the innocent, burn it to the ground. And Murtagh decides to escape with his faithful Sir Tornek because he's not into that. And I think this was a setup because Galbatorix must have guessed he might leave because there was an ambush set up when Murtagh tried to leave. I think it was a test.
And when you say his faithful servant Tornak, you're talking about the real life man or the horse? Do you think he went with Tornak and Tornak?
What if Murtagh's mentor is the horse Tornak? No, there's a man named Tornak. A man is dead, Jacqui.
Damn. I got got.
Tornak was killed. Murtagh barely got away. Tornak killed himself, essentially. Like, fought off all the guards so Murtagh could get away. Later on, while he was hiding with a friend, because, remember, Murtagh's like a noble, and so as he was hiding with his friend, he heard that the Razak had been sent out from their lair, and Murtagh decided to follow them, and then he found Eragon. Eragon asks why then won't, after knowing all of this, why won't Murtagh join the Varden? He sounds like a perfect candidate. And Murtagh's answer here is really interesting, and I think it gives this chapter a lot of depth. He tells Eragon that he doesn't want to be caught by Galbatorix, or let it be known that he works with Galbatorix's enemies.
Okay.
More importantly, though, Murtagh feels differently about the Empire than Eragon. He says that the Varden aren't just trying to kill Galbatorix, but destroy the entire empire, and he doesn't want that. He says that the system is sound, even if there's a bad king. I think he's talking about the nobles and the people he knows.
The way the government's run. I mean, he's from a big city, presumably. I don't know. It's a little tough for me, I guess, because it's like he's been out on the road. Presumably, he's seen the chaos that the Empire's in, and he knows enough to know who the Urgals serve and, all of this crazy shit that we've found out slowly.
Yeah, he told us.
Yes, and he knows about the slavery. I could see where, from basically, he's a coastal elite. He's like, things seem fine. My city's nice.
You don't like him more. No, he's definitely someone who has benefited from the way the Empire has been made and has friends who are also benefiting, it sounds like. So clearly, of course, he doesn't want to destroy or kill all those people. So that makes sense. He's really more worried about the sins of the father and all that.
Yeah, that he could never be accepted by the Varden, basically, because just by virtue of being Morzan's son, there's no real root for him.
Yes.
Yeah. Totally makes sense.
The chapter ends with them finally sleeping and eating, which...
Shocking. I'm surprised they have the capacity to do that still.
And if you're keeping track at home, the horses are alive. Somehow.
Absolutely. I can get on board, I guess, a little bit here. Absolutely inexplicable.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That does take us to chapter 51, The Glory of Trondheim. This chapter opens as Eragon wakes in the same chamber with Murtagh and Saphira, and our sweet bean farmer has some pretty existential thoughts here about the way he feels bound to Murtagh after what they've been through, carrying the sword that would have been his friend's inheritance. Just some pretty deep stuff, I'd say, for Eragon, but he doesn't have too long to ponder the two roads diverging in a wood, essentially, here, because a dozen soldiers storm into the room, followed by Oric, the dwarf, and the bald man to summon them to Ajahad, the leader of the Varden.
Yeah.
The bald man makes his first almost decent move of his tenure in our series thus far, actually updating Eragon, albeit briefly, but he gives Eragon a little status update on Arya.
Yeah.
And she's alive, but the healers are still tending to her. This weird little entourage rides single file along a massive tunnel, the biggest thing I think Eragon's ever seen.
Yeah.
This massive tunnel further and further into the mountain. They're riding for nearly an hour.
Insane.
Yes. Eragon takes note of the incredible stonework that's in the tunnel, and he's marveling again at the fact that he's in the presence of dwarves. This is something this is something I think maybe he was second guessing even existed.
Yeah. There was an element of maybe, but I've never seen one.
Yes. And neither is anyone I've ever known or spoken to.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. But He actually, I'm surprised by him here. He actually manages to wonder how the dwarves and the Varden are connected. Like he actually thinks for a second about like, hey, I wonder what the political implications are of the situation that I'm in. It's like, great. Finally, after this ride, they come to a massive set of blackstone doors, accented by like scores of marble pillars studded with precious gems and intricate carvings overhead. Eragon hasn't made like his way all the way inside yet of anything. He's still in the freaking entrance tunnel. And this first glimpse of Varden Door in the city of Trondheim is so fun to read, so evocative. I still go like full eyes wide as saucers reading it now.
It's so cool.
Yes.
It's very, very cool.
Yes. I mean, it's an astronomically large volcanic crater in which sits a breathtakingly beautiful fortress city stronghold. Like,
well, yeah.
Huge military like stronghold, but it's like the most beautiful thing anybody's ever seen. And it's all topped off by the biggest fucking gemstone anyone in the world has ever seen. The biggest gemstone that exists.
So
just
cool.
like sits atop it. Like, how can you not love that?
Talk about bling, man.
Yes, for sure. And it's super endearing too, because Eragon's like too awestruck, I think, to notice that there's a crowd of thousands of people here staring at him as he enters. He and Saphira share like an awkward moment where Eragon probably looks like a maniac. He's like jerking his arm around and like contorting his face, trying to smile and wave.
It's
he's
described
so
weird.
Yes. I mean, he's just so terrified. He has no idea what to do. But Saphira, she's the MVP here. She gives him some encouragement, and the crowd ends up erupting into a cheer for them.
Nice.
Yeah. And Saphira doesn't take long at all, of course, to settle into mass adoration. She's just like, yes, finally. And she parades Eragon through the crowd of like tough and hopeless looking people and dwarves that finally have been given a reason to cheer. It's such a cool scene.
It is cool. I have always pictured like Saphira doing that like horse
like
trots.
the clip clop.
Yeah, like
like,
where they bring up their like
they pick their
hooves,
feet up.
all fancy.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Feetsies up real high.
Yeah, but it makes me giggle so
Yes,
much. It's so funny.
I like that a lot. She's a show pony a little bit.
She is. She loves
a vicious, murdering show pony.
She's a complicated woman, all right?
I don't know. I know I'm a sucker, but like, I just think this shit is cool. We end the chapter with our party making their way through the city and down another tunnel into the deep to enter another massive door and scene. Where are they going?
That leads us to chapter 52, which is the last chapter today. Ajahad.
Yeah.
First off, Ajahad sounds like a badass. The way he is described painted a very vivid picture to me. He's really regal. He's wealthy. He's a strong man. He has an amazing beard.
Yes. Okay. Do not ever fail to mention, too, he's hot as hell. Ajahad could anyone in this book, Dane, Ajahad could for sure get it. My ideal casting of Ajahad is Idris Elba, and you are welcome to borrow that from me to live rent-free in your head now, too.
I mean, now I got Luther as Ajahad.
Yeah.
I love it.
Perfect.
I love that casting.
A beautiful, beautiful man.
Now it just sounds even cooler.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it got better once he starts talking. So for this chapter, rather than going through everything that happened, I'm going to describe the world building and political stuff we learn here in this chapter, Ajahad. It is dense. It's going to take us a second, but there's a lot of stuff. It will not be chronological. So if you're waiting for a chronological like normal, it's not. I'm just putting stuff where it goes.
Yes, they mostly spend this chapter talking to Ajahad and finding out all this information. So I think you've put it together in a way that makes the most sense.
Yeah, I like took all the stuff in like later conversations and put them up where they mattered. Okay, so anyway, first there are the two of those bald fuckers who apparently have no names, which is weird as hell and also yuck. Twins, am I right? Anyway, they're known as the twins. Ajahad knows who Murtagh is through the way he looks.
Okay.
His voice. And somehow, the scar on his back.
Very suspicious.
It's very confusing to me for several reasons, but I think maybe Paolini is trying to show just how effective and all-knowing the network of spies in the Varden are.
Yeah, like just Ajahad knows everything and is very competent.
It's a little clunky, but I think that's what he's trying to do.
Okay.
Murtagh still refuses the twins when they want to get into his mind. Mm-hmm. He just wants to leave. But Murtagh is going to be confined to a cell instead for more than his safety. Than for him being dangerous. So like Ajahad's like, people will kill you.
Oh.
Because they hate you.
That escalated quickly.
Yes. So I'm putting you in a cell for your safety. Not for, I'm not worried. Well, there's thousands of us. I'm not worried about us. I'm worried about you. Also, they can't risk him getting caught by the Empire and him telling the Empire all he knows now. This is a bummer, but honestly, it makes sense. It would be like in resistance territory in the 40s, while also being like Hitler or Stalin's son or something.
Okay.
Murtagh does say something very cool here, and I'm going to read it. It's a longer quote, but I think it's great. My mind is the one. Sorry, I can't.
No, do it.
Hair flip. My mind is the one sanctuary that has not been stolen from me. Many have tried to breach it, but I have learned to defend it vigorously. For I am only safe with my innermost thoughts. You have asked for the one thing I cannot give, least of all to those two. So badass. Also, just more ways that Murtagh feels like a more fleshed out character to me.
Oh, clearly.
Than Eragon at this point.
Yeah, I can tell the way you feel about Murtagh. I think
I added some T-Minx on there.
Some.
Yeah.
That came from a deep place, Dane.
That's a dollop of T-Minx. Well, we learned, we'll pivot. We learned that Arya will recover.
Okay.
The Varden thanks Eragon for keeping her safe. He did them a service.
That's nice.
We learned that Brom already has told Ajahad through communication in Tiram a little about Eragon. So when they were in Tiram, Brom said his ring as proof.
Okay.
For a message, sent a message to Ajahad.
Oh.
Yeah.
So now they have Brom's ring.
So now they have Brom's ring, and he gives it back to Eragon, which is super rad.
That's really nice.
It's really nice. And Ajahad,
I feel like I got a little emotional here.
Yes.
In the book, I was like, oh, his daddy.
Oh.
Magic daddy. We miss ye.
We miss ye. Oh my God, we miss ye. Ajahad asks for the whole story, and Eragon tells him. It takes a while. Eragon tells Ajahad pretty much everything that happened to him to this point, for the only sole exception of the witch and the werecat's prophecies.
Okay. I like the way Eragon's trusting Ajahad here. I feel like he definitely seems trustworthy. He seems forthright. The way he deals with Murtagh, I think, is a big point in Ajahad's favor for Eragon. He's like, wow, that was tough, but fair. You understand what the stakes are, because I think Ajahad kind of says, it's not necessarily that I distrust you or I think you're going to run and tell everything to Galbatorix, but I know how shitty those people are. I know they'll torture you. I'm really options in a way.
And my people don't know you and they hate you.
Yes,
so.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. But to release him also, he's like, you just by existing put us in danger because now you know too much and we can't.
Unfortunately, you were taken here, so I can't let you go.
Yeah, I kind of liked that. I think it tells us a lot about Ajahad.
Yeah. We also learn not only does Ajahad know the shade Durza, but Ajahad is the one that put the scratch running down Durza's blade.
Crazy.
So confirmed badass.
Yes.
We also learn that Durza may only be killed with a stab through the heart.
Interesting.
And is still alive.
I do like that, the way women must be hot, men must be badass. Incredible swordsmen.
Well, and hot.
And hot, sure.
Yeah.
Not as hot as the women, though.
We've not met any rotund, non-badass men.
Sloane.
He was deathly skinny, right?
Yeah.
And
Garrow.
Yeah, Gary it is. Garrow. All right, well, we learned that Brom was the only one who not only took the egg to the Varden, but came up with a system that moved it from the Varden and the elves, so they both had a chance for a rider to be born in their communities and stop fighting over it and uniting all of these different rebel groups. We learned that the elves live in Weldon Varden somewhere for sure now, and they have stopped communicating with the Varden because of the capture of or death of Arya and the believed capture of the dragon egg.
Okay.
Also, because this event, the elves stopped supplying the Varden with food and, supplies.
They just fully blame this brutal attack by the Empire on the Varden.
Yes, and
I
don't remember
you guys forever.
I don't remember any human people on that in prologue. Anyway,
shots fired.
Yeah, supplying the Varden and communication is broken down.
Yes.
The elves don't even know about Eragon and Saphira.
Crazy.
Sounds like the elves are kind of wankers, but okay.
Yeah. I could kind of get on board there. Well, it just outsized reactionary.
I think he's trying to like make this like a political like world, you know, like this is like some Italian
be
troopers
factions
and like England. Yeah. But it just doesn't translate well here. It makes the elves look really goofy. So speaking of the elves, the Varden will also need to test how far Brom got in his training to see if it's time to be sent to the elves yet to finish his training for Eragon. And as it was Brom's and the Varden's right to start the training.
Okay.
So I guess everyone wants a piece of Eragon's lineage or something.
Yeah.
Ajad also explains that the Varden might already be lost, as there are lots of Urgles coming from their scouts. And Ajad believes there is a traitor in the Varden. He thinks this for 3 reasons.
Why can't they just be nice for once?
I know, nothing is nice. This is just like more stress. We have the prologue attack on Arya, which led to the supplies and support being cut off by the elves and risked the dragon egg being taken. We have Jode's business and Tyrm, as well as other suppliers inside the Empire coming, getting shut down, and now the Varden is being targeted that way.
Yes, and these are like Ajahad's points that there might be a traitor. He thinks a traitor in the Varden is responsible for all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now this is bullshit. Now there's this bullshit with the Urgles, and the Varden is just in a bad state.
Yeah.
And also probably hungry and like lacking supplies. So we learned that the Varden is also here. We learned that the Varden is different from the Dwarven kingdom, and they are not only living like with the dwarves or working alongside them, and they're only living there because King Hrothgar allows it.
Okay.
But some of the dwarves aren't happy about this. They don't want them there.
Oh.
And this is interesting, and it's a lot different than I expected, especially as a kid. I was like, wait, what? Essentially, the Varden is kind of being sheltered by the Dwarven king. They're aligned, but they're not the same organization, which explains Oric. So, like, Oric gets in trouble for disobeying an order in the chain of the command of the Varden, but rather than being sentenced to death for the insubordination, he is moved to be Eragon and Saphira's guide and butler. And,
interesting.
Yeah, and under Hrothgar.
Okay.
So, like, it's like he moved him laterally so that he didn't have to, like, punish him.
Okay.
And I think it's a clever move, as Oric is under the Dwarven king's power. And him being executed for breaking a commanding officer's orders in the Varden seems like it would mean a conflict between the Varden and the dwarfs. So it's kind of a weird political situation we have here.
Yeah, kind of dicey.
Yeah. And this is way more of an honor than a punishment, I guess. And we'll see this as the chapters progress. So he's also given Oric, it's also like a tacit agreement of what Oric did, which also makes Ajahad cool, because this is all like unspoken. You know what I mean? He's doing it all just by the books.
It is, yeah. It is pretty cool. I like to watch him like maneuver again. I really think that maybe people are getting too much of a sense about me, but I really love a competent man, like just getting shit done, everything that needs to be done in a way that's like elegant and like perfect. I'm into it.
Yeah. And finally, we're getting to the end of this. Finally, there is a moment in this chapter where Eragon gets a bit mouthy with Ajahad about whether the Varden are going to use him against his will. And he reminds Ajahad that he's a writer and he has power and he can use it as he sees fit.
Teens, am I right?
Yeah. And Ajahad politely points out, I think, that most other leaders don't take well to that tone, and that only Eragon, being what he is, protects him from being punished for both the tone and the rude question. And he supports the move. He respects the game and the spunk, but reminds Eragon to be careful with other groups and other people that will rely on him now. He is important. This part is kind of weird. Ajahad seems cool, but he almost seems too cool to me here. Is he a traitor?
Who hurt you, Dane? Why are you so suspicious?
I don't know.
Why can't he just be nice?
When people are perfect, I'm just like, I don't know. You're in every element here, with Murtagh, with the twins, with Oric, with his view of the political situation.
He employs the twins. He's not.
Well, I'm just saying, like, he doesn't miss.
Yeah.
Like, at all. There's nothing he did wrong here. So he seems just like instantly to take Eragon under his wing too.
Listen, dude. Okay, maybe I've got it. Everyone needs a good rebound. Like, to get themselves back in the game. And after Braum, Ajahad is like the perfect new pseudo daddy for Eragon. I'm into it. I will not hear any suspicion against this chill ass hardline rebel / warrior / battle tactician. He's the best, and I will not have you malign my headcanon Idris Elba. Get the fuck out of here.
Well, on that note, this chapter ends with Eragon getting some rest and being told to take a break, much like I am being told to take a break.
Time that Eragon gets to take a break. Did they just play him the Allegasia version of like break my soul? he's done with this capitalist hellscape. I could see Saphira for sure getting down on like Renaissance, being a militant member of the Beehive. I think they're full Beyonce stans, Eragon and Saphira. No, just me.
I think that's just you.
Fine. Okay. I guess I do have to stop talking about Beyonce eventually. Otherwise, we might be here all day, longer than we already have been here. And I do actually want to get into the analysis section to talk about something I think we both felt was a big through line.
It's time for analysis.
This episode's set of chapters here is another one where we have a lot of disparate things going on, I think. Kind of like last week was a little scattered.
Yeah.
I think we have some more kind of disparate plotting, but to me, a lot of it revolves around like the tension between who a person really is and how they're perceived. Like so much of this book, I definitely get the feeling that this is something that Christopher Paolini like wanted to explore as a 15-year-old author writing this like quintessentially coming of age tale. I think there are a few characters grappling with this tension in this section. Two obviously main characters.
Yeah.
But the first confrontation of it that we get is with the reveal, obviously, that Murtagh is Morzan's son. It's clearly information he does not give up lightly. And I think Christopher Paolini does a really good job of illustrating how self-aware Murtagh is in this situation. We already know he's like the pragmatic half of the Sword Bros.
Yes.
And we see this attitude kind of extends to his outlook on divulging his heritage. It's not just behead enslavers, Dane. It's also about keeping his secrets. And he knows exactly what effect like the perception of him as Morzan's son is going to have on his relationships. And he's world weary enough at just like, I think he's 18. He's world weary enough to know that he doesn't really want any part of navigating the Varden with the specter of what he was born as obscuring who he feels he really is.
Yeah.
And again, I think the way he's written is being very irritable and forceful in this section. Like he's a strong personality, but he's ultimately steadfast in his interactions around all this tension. I think it's a really good choice, that characterization on Christopher Paolini's part. Murtagh's mood and like volatility here are telling us pretty much everything we need to know about how this conflict between who he feels he really is and the way people cast him based on their perceptions like clearly weighs on him. You know, it feels like he's struggling out from under a mountain and it's making him understandably tense.
Yeah,
you know
of
what
course.
I mean?
I mean, we all would, right?
Yeah. So it definitely feels, all of this feels like something Christopher Paolini maybe could have been grappling with himself when he was writing this book. We know that Paolini has said he started writing Eragon when he needed a project after graduating high school through a homeschool program when he was only 15. So I can't help but like take just a couple of hopefully small leaps in logic here, like assumptions, to imagine, you know, whether being in early graduation, you know, kind of wunderkind, you hear about these like childhood genius prodigies who are like finished with med school by the age of 20.
Yeah.
If you know, being maybe that type of kid or having like the outside appearance of that type of kid and then choosing to pursue artistic projects like writing a book instead of going straight to college brought this like outside perception versus inner character tension into Christopher Paolini's own life. Like that would make
interesting.
Perfect sense to me.
I think that's probably, there's probably some of that going on here.
Just a couple small leaps, Dane.
Yeah.
Christopher Paolini, feel free, come on the podcast.
Yeah, we'll
correct the record yourself. But it
He's just pissed at you.
He's like, fuck that. That's not at all what happened. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I've invited him on. I'm in tears 5 minutes in.
Just Christopher Paolini yelling at you.
No. But it isn't just Murtagh actually having this conflict through this set of chapters. I like that we also see like a very different side of this tension in Eragon in this section. meeting the Varden, parading, like being the literal head of a parade through the crowd in Trondheim are really the first times that Eragon's been able to come into a situation without having to hide what he is.
Yes.
Yes. So in contrast with Murtagh, who's been, struggling with what he is versus who he is his entire life, and having the what he is part of it be very open and in the forefront. Everybody knows until he runs away exactly who Murtagh is.
Right.
Eragon's just now getting an identity that other people might perceive in any sort of way. I mean, before that, it was just farmer.
Garrow's son.
Yes, exactly. And the difference between the way Eragon is like experiencing this new sensation of people perceiving him as something apart from his actual actions and character, and the things that happen to Murtagh because of that same idea in this section could not be more stark. Like, there's a huge gap between what's happening to both of these characters, but it's ultimately the same idea, where Murtagh is forceful and moody. I think Eragon, for him, the weight and burden of the expectations of his identity, it creates kind of an internal conflict that we see him trying to work out primarily in his conversations with Saphir. That's such a good device for us to be able to know
internal thoughts.
What Eragon's going through. We're able to see the way Eragon's really starting to look inward to try to make thoughtful choices in the face of other people's perceptions. Like, it's really the first time we're seeing him understand he has a responsibility to people around him because of what he is, not just who he is, not just to be a good person, but to live up to an expectation, I think.
Yeah, I think I have some thoughts about that here. I agree this is a great device, and it makes a lot of sense, like you said, from a young Paolini. I do think Eragon, but would be what I would say, Eragon and Murtagh also have to react differently because the perceptions put on them by the respective communities are so different, right?
Yeah.
So like Murtagh has to be forceful. He has to be, because the perception of him is someone who will carry on power-hungry, backstabbing, cartoonishly evil legacy of a genociding maniac. That was his dad. I mean, he will, by most people, I even imagine within the Empire, be seen as someone to be feared and distrusted. He doesn't really have the luxury to really let people sit with those feelings if he doesn't want them to stick. He must be forceful in his feelings and pushy almost. And that's his moodiness, obviously, right? Like, it's coming out.
Yeah.
And Eragon's just a little different because you're right. This is a new responsibility, but he's really being seen as a savior and like a demigod. And that mostly gives positive implications of him to those who don't know him. So while he is grappling with who he is and the assumptions are heavy, they're overwhelming, but they're overwhelmingly positive. So he doesn't have to be as forceful in his renunciations of the things that might be incorrect about him or people's assumptions.
Well, also, I think it's still so new for him. He doesn't even know he needs to renounce people's assumptions of him yet, Yeah,
that's also like, given his age and his lack of understanding of himself. Yeah. He's kind of like has this lag time to go, oh, is this who I am? Is this what I believe?
Yeah.
And of course, this brings with it its own weight and his expectations. Will I measure up mentally? All that type of stuff. But to your point, I love the device. I think that Paolini really did this masterfully, because I think for the most part, they're fighting the expectations the other have over them. I will say, Murtagh has the benefit of like time dealing with this. He's grown up dealing with this, and that definitely gives him.
But he also has the experience of time too, which has hardened his. I think I was trying to get at. I
that's
think
what you're
put
getting
it
at
in a really good way.
Yeah.
I think
it's a little unfair for Murtagh here. I just think the only thing is like,
well, the world is unfair. I think the writing is a good choice to like illustrate that difference.
Yes.
To illustrate how the world is being unfair to Murtagh.
100% agree. Yeah, and so I think. Fantastic analysis. I love that. No, because I love this comparison you brought out between.
You just love
Paolini.
Murtagh.
Well, no.
If I focus on Murtagh, it's a 10 out of 10.
Let's head to a deep dive. Deep dive. Since the last time I did a deep dive on the magic system, you know when that was? Do you know how long ago that was now?
No, time's a flat circle.
Oh, God.
I think I have died and been reborn in this room many a moon since we started Dane.
Kevin back there is like, well, I wish you guys would have died a long time ago.
I wish the rebirth stopped happening, but.
Yeah. Well, the last time we dived into the magic system was episode 4, and I decided it was time for us to look into this again, because as what we know has not very much changed, but it is important to keep it front of mind, because I think, as we go forward to the end crescendo of the story, it might involve some of that stuff. So We were told there are 4 types of magic users: riders who can cast magic through connection with dragons, sorcerers who enslave spirits, magicians who have the ability to cast magic innately, and witches and wizards who use external means such as potions and other objects. To cast magic, a user must know how to access magic within themselves, manipulate it using the ancient language, and pay the cost of the spell.
Okay.
The ancient language is like code. The more the user knows, the more the user can do.
Love that analogy.
Especially because I don't code.
Doesn't matter. It's a perfect analogy. I love it.
The cost of magic is determined by the user's physical strength and energy and the distance of the spell's target. Attempts to bring people back from the dead are impossible and will result in death. The ancient language has other implications, such as animals, understanding its intent, the existence of true names, the power of oaths made in the language. Knowing one's true name can be dangerous and lead to madness and great power over oneself.
Yes, a thing I understand very perfectly. That makes absolute sense to me.
Yeah, it just clicks right away, right? And here we get to see kind of how the magic system works, and it tells us a lot about the world and maybe the cultures of how people feel about magic and magic users.
Okay.
It seems that the Bald Bros, those twins,
fuck them.
are seeking out information about the ancient language inside Eragon's brain.
Yes, that's right.
And this brings to mind something to think about when it comes to the world of Alagasia. First, it seems information about the ancient language is not well known. If this is true, it creates 3 major outcomes worth talking about, I think, here.
Okay.
The first is that seeking of this information, hoarding of this information, and protecting and keeping this information secret would be ultra important, right?
Okay.
You want your enemies to know less.
Yes.
You want other magic users to know less in case you have to mind fight them at some point. So naturally, things are going to be kept like pretty hush-hush.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that you can like spring some traps on people if you need to. Or
Yeah, you're not outpowered in like the constant military, like, churning struggle, right?
Okay.
So this is also like makes that all priceless.
Does this have anything like, do we have any idea? It's just kind of occurring to me, like how many magic users are in the population, or like, can we make any inferences based on what we know? Because it does seem really secretive.
I would say based on what we do in the future, there is no way to know in this book.
Okay.
Anything we were to speculate from this book would be wrong.
Yeah.
And like what we learn, we actually don't even learn for like several books.
Okay.
There's just no information about this.
Yeah.
But it's a really good question because it would kind of get into
seems like
this.
it has, definitely an outsized effect on the way magic functions in the culture in Alagasia.
There is something. Well, let me come to this at the end here because there is something about what you just said that maybe the question you asked that we can talk about.
Okay.
But I want to do it at the end because I want to see if it fits.
Okay.
So second, it seems like it would be best for oaths and contracts at some level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially maybe with an evil king, perhaps.
Allegedly.
And if you don't know the language very well, as we just spoke about, most people don't know anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
It would make having to give those oaths extra scary.
Yeah.
Because you would have to just take the person who's giving you the lines word for it.
Yeah.
You would be swearing anything. You could be swearing. That would just be terrifying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And third, mistakes. We've experienced these along with Kevin. With so much unknown and with few speakers and writers of this magic language, mistakes must be extremely high.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, risk of mistake must be extremely high. So, you might have someone swear the wrong thing even, which is potentially bad for both parties.
Yes.
And you could cast the wrong spell that you did something you didn't intend. So there's just like way more risks. It really makes the ancient language a huge risk, and I imagine it strikes both fear and hunger in most people when it's brought up. Now, I want to come back to what you asked, because I think we do have one inference here. We do know that all elves speak the ancient language and intuitively know their true names.
That's right.
So I would imagine, even if the population of magic users is smaller in the elven community, that they would still be the best. Like they would outnumber. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, it seems like there's an inherent piece of magic, obviously, which is the language you conduct magic in.
Yeah.
That is second nature, essentially, to the elves. So as a race, they are likely to be a step up. I think Brahm says something to this effect.
Yeah.
I think he hints at it with both magic and also the other most important thing in this world, which is sword fighting skills.
Yeah, physical might.
Yes, he
right.
says like the elves are going to be stronger, faster. It doesn't matter how good of a blade master
Which
Eragon
goes to
is.
the magic too.
Yes, he's
right?
always going to be outclassed. So maybe I think that's a good good point. Maybe the magic is something like that, where the elves are just always going to outclass other races.
Yeah, on the magic front, right?
Yes.
And that is something that as a human, I would hate.
Yeah.
Which leads us to, what are the haters saying?
Hey.
Actually, you should do your research, huh? Have you even read the book?
What are the haters saying?
There is an index in the back, right? This is horribly derivative. Copycat.
Sorry, I'm like patting myself on the back.
Hey, the transitions, I have no notes. You're so good. The haters transition specifically, I'm like, do you dream about that? Like, do you ruminate on what
Yeah, I just have an intuitive touch for
comes to you?
hatred.
Vision for Gad.
Yeah. So the haters this week have some trouble with the reactions of Eragon and Saphira when they find out about bad boy Murtagh is the son of the Forsworn.
Yeah.
I do think this one is pretty funny, actually. It's a funny gripe to me. So the general premise here is that Murtagh saved Eragon and Saphira from the Rozak, as well as saving them, Eragon from jail, and now is on the run from them, like with them from the Empire. And it has been many, many nights during all of this in which Murtagh has not only slept near Eragon and Saphira, but has had Eragon alone while Saphira flew away, has even like sparred with Eragon with real
and he's
swords.
like keeping watch over them while they sleep for many nights.
Yeah,
He's cooking all their food. It's like easily could have poisoned them.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
If Murtagh was any threat to the two of them, he would have killed, attacked, or threatened so many times over and over. It was easy. Heck, he wouldn't even have let Eragon out of the jail. You know what I mean? So the reaction of both Eragon and Saphira is seen not only as odd, but just completely out of character. Now, my response to this is, man, I mean, frankly, I have learned things about friends of mine in the past, and it has changed the way I viewed them.
Yeah.
This is something that happens to most people, I think. It is
like even innocuous things. You're just like, oh,
weird.
You're a little different to me now.
Yeah, that changes how I think about you. But it is hard not to see people through the context of their parents and their upbringing, or even when they themselves have done something horrible in the past. Also, they both, so that's normal.
Yes.
But they both get over it fairly quickly here. And so it was a temporary reaction during a strenuous and very difficult high-stress moment.
Yes.
Remember
all the Urgles.
Yeah,
chasing them down.
Like super eye roll. I see the point, and frankly, I think it could have been handled differently, sure. But like, I actually don't think it's a big deal at all, haters. This is like the lamest thing you brought up all season.
Okay, I could see that.
Yeah.
I get that the responses feel, I guess where I am is like the responses feel unfair to Murtagh. Kind of what we talked about, like the world feels unfair to Murtagh in a lot of ways. And like this is a piece of that. And I think maybe the fact that people bristle at that because they like Murtagh so much kind of leads to this hate. They're like, well, Eragon and Saphira shouldn't have done that. It's like, well, no, they shouldn't have done that. But it's not, that doesn't mean it's out of character or it's bad writing. In fact, I kind of think it's good writing because we love our bean farmer, but this guy is barely 6 months removed from being like low-key emotionally stunted.
Yeah.
Like, never forget, am I blind? Why are my cheeks wet? Like, he didn't know what crying was.
He definitely has a buffer circle.
A couple of months ago. So the fact that like under these circumstances, he reacted to like this huge informational bomb that got dropped on him before taking a considered assessment of Murtagh's character and actions, that he just like was reactionary.
Yeah.
It's like, sure, any kid would do that. Any adult in this situation would do that. Many like well-balanced people in normal situations do shit like this.
Yeah, I don't.
And maybe where Saphira goes like a little harder in the aggression department when they get the news, she like, but even then she's like takes an aggressive stance and like growls a little bit.
Yeah.
And pretty much immediately after that, like, she's the one who comes around to what the haters are saying. She's the one who comes around to this logic-based, like, if he wanted us dead, he could have killed us already. She tells Eragon that herself within like 2 or 3 pages.
It's pretty quick.
Yes, and as a famously hot-tempered fucking dragon, like, I feel like I could see why they don't like this reaction, because they love Murtagh and they're protective over their BB boy. But this makes perfect sense to me.
I mean, I truthfully, like, we don't even need to spend any more time on it. It just does, because it just is kind of goofy.
Yeah.
There's really nothing here. I'm only adding it because, it's one of the two things, and it
is a lot of hate,
and it was often and frequent, and it's like I just think it's okay.
I hope they all listen to this podcast, and they're like, "Damn, they had some really nice points." I'm a considerate and thoughtful person who can change my opinions.
Oh, I'm sure the haters are listening and going, "Oh, these guys really did consider nuance." I appreciate that.
I think everybody has the capacity to grow and change, Dane, to take in new information and reform their opinions of the world.
Well, we'll see. On to the next one, right? Yes. And as often is the case, Jax, the hate is mostly stupid and overly picky here. There's one of the other gripes I saw the haters have in this section, and it goes something like this. How the heck does Ajahad know that Murtagh has the scar on his back? For Murtagh's telling, he was raised in a secret, like as a little kid, and only later was taken in by the king and raised among the nobles. Murtagh is also super bummed out and not proud of his scar. We've kind of seen this as it's played out throughout the chapters. It doesn't seem like he'd be showing it off all the time, or even a little, to be honest. And how does Ajahad know about this? It seems far-fetched at best. Sure, I see this, but I think this is what Christopher Paolini is doing here. Is supposed to be using a tool to show that Ajahad has spies in the Empire, knows a lot about his important enemies or potential enemies.
Yes.
And even if those enemies are only perceived, he's watching them.
Yes.
That's it.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. Is it tenuous? Sure. We're such assholes. We're like, cool.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things. Like, this is the type of stuff that I think people tease fantasy fans about in other fandoms, even.
Yes.
And it's just like
being mad about this stuff is what?
Like being super pedantic about every detail of these type of things. Like this, sure. Like the thing is like, there's no argument here. It's a little tenuous. It doesn't really make much sense. Is it possible? Sure. Is it likely? No. Does that matter at all? To the writing, to the story, to the enjoyment? It's just like, I really just don't think so.
Yeah, to the enjoyment, maybe. For people who definitely are not you and I.
Well, then take a chill pill, brah. Go seek a therapy. I'm just kidding.
Listen, I'll send you a bottle of Prosecco right in. Have a couple glasses.
I got really worked up on the haters this week. I don't know why.
They're there, Dane.
I have a season of this, and I'm mad at you haters.
No,
all right.
It's okay. You're fine. Yeah. You have opinions.
My 11-year-old rage is coming. All right.
Haters, you have opinions, but maybe just think a little bit about what we're saying. Yeah. We're not dumb. We're nice people. You could just agree with us.
I guarantee there's going to be a episode by episode breakdown of all the ways in which we are wrong.
Wait.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
I'm excited. I seem nice, but I'm like, I'll fight you.
Oh my
Let's roll.
I will not fight you. Well, before we leave, I had to say that this was all very exciting, and I'm glad the teen angst was turned down somewhat from the fist fighting and threats to character development here.
Okay.
I have to say, I think Murtagh is so much more a nuanced and real feeling character compared to Eragon, and that is a double-edged sword. Whether you like Murtagh as a character or not, he has opinions that seem really solid. They seem really thought out. He's got a belief system of some sort. He has a complicated and interesting backstory, and he seems to have earned his badassness in a lot of ways,
yes.
Through practice of years of work with clashes. It clashes pretty starkly with Eragon's 6 months, and I'm good at everything already sort of thing. I was a bean farmer, but now I'm here.
Yeah.
Started from the bean farm, now I'm here. Right. I also think that Murtagh is super interesting because he gives us a less black and white, good and evil outlook of the world that until this point, no one, not even Braum, has been able to deliver.
Yes.
And I just really like Murtagh. It's very clear, but I find that for me, it is taking away a bit from Eragon and making him seem pretty underdeveloped. And I'm hoping that as we get near the end of this book, we get some more nuanced thinking from Eragon and Saphira too.
That's interesting. I feel like for me, it feels similar to what we talked about with Arya being kind of the classic damsel in distress a couple of episodes ago. Like in my previous read, Murtagh having this type of depth just felt like a fun addition to the story, because when I compared him to Eragon, I had all the trappings of the like hero archetype, the hero trope, doing a lot of the lifting for Eragon's character development, essentially.
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, I don't necessarily need Eragon to be super fleshed out and nuanced, because I read this book knowing he's the main guy and not really looking for my expectations of what that entails to be subverted here. I think plus the point of the book is from Eragon's perspective to show his coming of age. So if he starts out in a place that's a little shallow, I think the point is to show him growing a little bit deeper. And I obviously can't say with certainty what Christopher Paolini intended to do with all of these characters. But that really strikes home for me. So I can see how Murtagh feels like a character with a lot of depth and like a life full of intrigue that has made him savvy with a specific worldview. But I guess the contrast with Eragon here really highlights exactly the thing that Christopher Paolini would want to see in Eragon in the first place. Like he's said again in interviews that he started writing Eragon as himself, essentially. And I think the reason a lot of readers have been able to connect with the character over the years is because we're right there learning about the world and developing opinions about it with someone who started out as just like the most ordinary of bean farmers. So I think it makes sense that we're able to take this character who is evolving over time, a nuanced viewpoint, map onto them what we're evolving to learn lessons along with them, and go on that journey. I frankly don't know why else you read a coming of age book.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Which is also why like we came back to it after all these years, right? Where fans begin with it. I mean, as a kid, I did just what you described. I love Eragon, and I really felt like I had a lot of similarities with him and his like genericness. Kind of as a kid, you place yourself in his shoes and would also feel overwhelmed and would hope that you did as good as him. You know what I mean? Every boy I knew growing up into fantasy would have loved to be a competent swordsman in 4 months. It's a teen fantasy. I'm important. I'm a hero. I'm learning stuff. I'm better. I'm faster. I'm special. You know, you add the soul melded dragon friend and immortality and beauty, and man, sounds fucking rad.
Yeah.
You know, and for me, this book gave a boy who was struggling with reading, who just moved to a new city, who was being brutally teased because I grew up dancing, a place to go where things worked out for a dopey kid.
Yeah.
It was a place that I could put myself, like you're saying, and go, okay, I'm cool, and I can get through this horrible adventure with like the coals in my school, and maybe I'll be heroic or even be seen by those around me one day. In its truest sense, for me, I think it's an escape like most of fantasy, and I wanted to be Eragon and have the chance to like change like he did, from a farm boy to a hero, from a struggling teen who people tease about to a confident teen who was like proud of himself and his friends. And I think you're absolutely right. That's really what Eragon's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Any more depth kind of it takes that away.
A little bit, I think.
You can't put yourself
if
in
he comes in with a gritty backstory like Murtagh, you're just like, oh, okay, well.
I can't really relate to that.
What am I? Yeah.
Like, I think Murtagh's cool, but I don't relate to him in any way.
Yes, I knew you as an older teen. You were neither that gritty, nor that cool, nor that good at sword fighting.
Well, you were wrong about that. I've always been an expert swords fighter. No, you're right. I have nothing in common with Murtagh. You know what I mean? And that's what makes him interesting to read about. But like, you're absolutely right.
Makes him fun, maybe aspirational in a way. Like we're almost, again, the similarities here maybe are trying to point out that we're taking the same character at two different points in their journey in a lot of ways.
In their arc. Yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah.
I love these books.
I know. I'm excited to wrap this first book up, see if Eragon, develops, makes it, becomes completely complex and nuanced.
Fully actualized.
In our next episode.
Yeah.
You think it's happening?
Oh yeah, totally. We can't possibly wrong about that.
No, we're never wrong about anything.
I don't think we've been wrong about a damn thing.
No.
Well, on that note, that about wraps it up for this episode. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions or want to hit us up with a good tagline or suggestion for what are the haters saying or anything else, really,
yes, if
about
you are
the show.
The haters.
Yeah, if you're the hater,
Please
just want to write us a hate mail, we'll read it. You can email us at isthisjustfantasypod@gmail.com. As always, be sure to rate it and review, especially on Apple Podcasts, and check out our social media at isthisjustfantasypod on TikTok or at justfantasypod on Instagram and Twitter.
Yes, and if you want to keep pace and read along with us, and if after 9 episodes you're getting to the 10th and you're like, fuck it, I'm not going to finish this book. Yeah. I have a lot of questions about you as a person, but please keep pace. Read along with us. Next episode, we'll be covering the final chapters of Eragon, chapter 53, Bless the Child, Arshet Lamb, through chapter 59, The Morning Sage.
Now there's a middle name.
We've got blessings, we've got
Sages.
Mornings, we've got, do you think it's like witchy saging, like crystals, tarot?
We're just two nerds and we love our fantasy. Come on and listen to us next time. Find out what our deep dive will be. Thanks for catching our show.